Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello, my name is Saleem Siddiqui. There is a need in this day and age to try to talk about the issues that we're facing as a society, here with the United States being in a war on terror with the ongoing war in Iraq and the ongoing war in Afghanistan. But the ongoing war on terror and the war mentality, there's a need for people to be able to conduct themselves and discuss issues of relevance and importance in a manner that is acceptable in civilized society, to have civilized discourse, to be able to openly and freely express your views and talk about issues that are pertinent and relevant to solving this generation's problem. Now, being a Muslim myself, I have to look at these issues perhaps from a perspective that is different from many other Americans living here in the United States, me being in Texas, but all across the country. But that perspective and the ability to openly speak that is one of the beauties that makes America so great. And so, the need for the overall majority in this country to recognize and respect the opinions of others and to encourage free speech and expression in all of its forms, not just in speaking, but through the arts and music and literature and many other methodologies that we'll go into in this series. There is a need for us to reawaken that flame of encouraging the positive spirit and expression of all of our citizens. Now, when we talk about things like clash of civilizations and whether the worlds are coming to an end, we have to always take things into perspective, especially when we're talking about matters such as war and death and what is justice in our own opinion. This issue of the clash of civilizations is very troubling. It forces the whole world into thinking that there are only two sides and that there is no middle ground. There is black and white and no gray in between. When people who are enlightened and people who have taken the time to educate themselves, people who have taken the time to read and understand, know that sometimes this complicated world that we live in, it has many dichotomies, and sometimes more than that. And so, we must talk about issues like clashes of civilization, while still being able to understand the perspective of various parties and peoples in our world. Some say that we're referring to the end of days. Some say that we're referring to the end of days when we're talking about the Christian evangelical right and the need to support Israel and the fight over Jerusalem and the coming of Jesus Christ. Some on the Muslim side say this is a jihad, this is the struggle to the end, the violent struggle for right versus wrong, and we are sure we are on the right, and no matter who we have to kill, let it be done. Anybody who takes a few minutes to ponder the issues can know that neither side can be correct. And so we must be understanding that it is the duty of the people of faith to always speak out and say that we must continue to do acts of righteousness and be moral and upright in our character and be looking and striving for what is the most beneficial for all of mankind in everything that we do. In everything that we do. while still being able to maintain our beliefs and our faith. And that is one of the beauties that we find in the United States of America. Now here in the States, we're seeing that they call this change after 9/11, this catastrophe that changed the world and turned it upside down. It's been partially a media framing, but also it's something that we must understand in the way societies function and cultures react. 9/11 was a damaging, catastrophic event, and there's no way to doubt that. There's no way to deny that the senseless killing of innocent civilians who are not engaged in combat is unacceptable for a political reason. Or it doesn't justify as the political moral good. It comes back to our conversation about morality. And so we talk about where are the moderate Muslims or where are the mainstream Muslims, and those terms get spun and misused so much so that the environment hasn't become conducive for civilized discourse. And so how do we bridge that gap? Well, we do have a situation that is somewhat unique. When we're talking about the Muslim community, we have to recognize that we're talking about the majority of Muslim community being immigrants from another country. Immigrants from countries who, in their majority Muslim status, have highly repressive regimes, even the liberal ones. And so to be here in America, where you're allowed free speech and grew up with the freedoms and expressions and the ability to learn civilized discourse, is an interesting phenomena that the second generation of Muslims growing up here in the West are starting to realize. And so, we need to have the ability to have civilized discourse in our society, whether it's through online communication, radio, television, writing, and all forms of expression. But we do have a problem where the Muslims feel like they are pressured and obliged to atone for the sins of every single one of their forefathers and ancestors. A burden being put on them, so much so that they're hesitant to even raise their heads. Now, many of them, it could be cultural, because they grew up in societies where you're not allowed to speak out against your rulers. Many of the regimes that we so commonly support and cooperate with. But that's another story. Here in America, we need to somehow preserve the ability to have civilized discourse so that we protect all of us. It's the same reason why I have just as much right to speak and talk about things and say my opinions. And strangely enough, in America, we're supposed to believe that if my opinions are in total opposition to yours, even 100% of them, you're supposed to agree that I have the full right to express those opinions. And I'm supposed to agree that you have the full right to express your opinions. Civilized discourse. Now, the surprising issue, here's the rub. The surprising issue is that if we were to actually have a civilized discourse, we would find that we not only disagree on very little, that is, the true Muslim believers, the quote-unquote moderate mainstream, or any other kind of framed media word you want to use, for those that represent what most Muslims believe. Not only would we not have very much to disagree about, we would have so much in common that it would start to make people feel uncomfortable because they've agreed with the setup that there is an us versus them, a clash of civilizations, two sides diametrically opposed, opposing each other to the bitter end, to the end of the world and the end of days. It's not even that great of a movie pitch if you want to look at it like that.